Israeli occupation forces carry out 5 massacres in Gaza, killing 52 and injuring 59 others. An Israeli patrol of tanks and bulldozers enters Beit Leaf and Shel Rumeya area. And the Syrian delegation led by the new foreign minister visits Riyadh. It's 4 p.m. Car local time and you're watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Israeli occupation forces have committed 5 massacres in the Gaza Strip within 24 hours, causing at least 52 deaths. Palestinian medical sources confirmed that 59 injured people reached hospitals. In addition, drone attacks targeted northern Gaza, while residential buildings were demolished in Jabalia. Relentless Israeli attacks have caused mass casualties, severe infrastructure damage, and a worsening humanitarian crisis due to blocked supplies. The Palestinian National Council has condemned the targeting of a tent for the displaced in Qnews as part of an ongoing genocide in Gaza lasting 454 days. It highlighted the suffering caused by Israeli airstrikes, especially during freezing weather, with children dying from cold and rain flooding shelters. The Council criticized Israel's severe violation of international humanitarian law and urged the international community to immediately halt the aggression. Palestinian media has reported that at least 4 people have been killed and several others have been wounded after Israeli air attacks hit El Shati refugee camp in the Gaza Strip. The reports added that women and children were among the 11 dead in Qnews, southern Qnews. 2 Palestinians were also killed in northern Jabalia. Gaza's based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip have climbed to over 45,500, with over 108,400 wounded. That came as Israeli airstrikes in Gaza City killed 5 Palestinians and injured others. The first strike targeted a vehicle in El Daraj, killing 3 and critically injuring others. A second attack hit a group near El Thawra Street, killing 2 more civilians and injuring additional people. Government media office in Gaza said that the number of humanitarian relief workers killed in Israel attacks since October the 7th of the year 2023 has increased to 736. And according to the United Nations, more aid workers have been killed in 2024 than in any other year on record, with 2/3 dying in the occupied Palestinian territory. As Gazans enter the new year, hope for peace and stability hangs by a thread. While the second winter of war intensifies, they're suffering amid relentless weather and ongoing destruction.
As the new year dawns, Gazans hold on to a fragile hope that 2025 could bring a semblance of stability and peace to their war-torn land. Yet, as they brace themselves for another winter in the midst of devastation, the question remains, will this year be different? The second winter of the ongoing war in Gaza has intensified the suffering of hundreds of thousands, with families already displaced multiple times now facing brutal weather conditions. The relentless winds and heavy rains have compounded the dire situation, leaving makeshift shelters in ruins. In Qnews, dozens of tattered tents have been torn apart or submerged, forcing residents to battle the elements, patching up plastic sheets and piling sand to stave off flooding. The human toll of Israel's war on Gaza has been catastrophic, with Palestinian health officials reporting over 45,500 deaths. Gaza, once a thriving community, now lies in ruins, a landscape of rubble and destruction where entire neighborhoods have been obliterated. Despite international calls for a ceasefire, efforts remain stalled, and as the new year progresses, the people of Gaza find themselves in a painful limbo, clinging to a hope that seems ever more elusive. Their struggle for survival continues, marked by grief, resilience, and the ever-present desire for peace in a land ravaged by war.
And for more analysis, we now move on to Salma Marwan in the newsroom for more analysis. Salma?
Thank you, Rana. And for further analysis on the current situation in Gaza amid the ongoing Israeli aggression, we're joined from Ramallah by the spokesperson of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, Fatah, Ahmed Fatouh. Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And first off, in your opinion, why has Hamas intensified its rocket fire towards Israel in recent times?
First, I would send my prayers to our victims in Gaza who are suffering this brutal, inhumane genocide perpetrated by the Israeli occupation. Our people are steadfast and resilient in their struggle for freedom and liberation. What we could analyze that after the intensifying of Israeli attacks in Gaza, whipping out the north and destroying a huge amount of lands in the south of Rafah and devastating the Palestinian people, probably that response, by Hamas is trying to, to show that they are still fighting in the ground. But Israel has shown a huge amount of brutality and using mass weapon of mass destruction against the Palestinian people.
With the Israeli defense minister threatening to intensify the bombing on Gaza Strip with a force never seen before, and with Donald Trump reaffirming the need to release the Israeli detainees, what are the chances to reach a ceasefire agreement before Trump officially takes office?
We don't see that Netanyahu is serious or sincere in making a ceasefire deal. Netanyahu's plan is pretty opposite from the very beginning, is to displace the Palestinian people, terminate the Palestinian people, and target all the sources of life in Gaza. And his plan is beyond Gaza. It's also in the West Bank, in Jerusalem. And he's bombing in Syria, bombing in Lebanon. This is a man of war, a man of genocide. He does not care about anything. And he does not care about the Israeli prisoners as well. What they want is to put the plan of displacing and exterminating the Palestinian people forward. They are using October 7 as an excuse since the beginning of this genocidal war. So I don't believe that Netanyahu is clear about his finding a ceasefire, and with the unconditional support that they have from the United States, unfortunately, is giving him the green light to continue doing these mass crimes against humanity.
But sir, don't you think that the dire situation of detainees in Gaza due to the ongoing bombardment by the Israeli occupation forces could perhaps pressure Israel to reach a ceasefire agreement?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm sorry. Well, without the international pressure over Israel and without holding Israel accountable, there will not be a ceasefire. Eventually, in the scale of war, Israel is not having much losses in its sides compared to the losses that we are having in our side. So it's the whole international community that should intervene and step forward and
Ever since the Israeli media reported that there has been some progress in the ceasefire talks, the Israeli occupation forces intensified its military campaign against Gaza and the West Bank, and especially in northern Gaza, with the forced evacuations of Kamal Adwan Hospital and the Indonesian hospital. How do you interpret these actions and the contradiction we're witnessing?
So I didn't hear the question quite clearly. There was an interruption in the voice.
I was talking about how the Israeli media, ever since they started reporting that there has been some progress in the ceasefire talks, Israeli occupation forces have intensified their military campaign against Gaza, especially in the northern parts, with the forced evacuations of Kamal Adwan Hospital and the Indonesian hospital. How do you view this contradiction?
Well, I hope these talks in Cairo and the pressure from our brothers in Cairo and Egypt could, be successful in making a ceasefire. And we really need to have a ceasefire as soon as possible. There is a humanitarian catastrophe. What Israel is doing, I believe that Netanyahu is crippling this ceasefire. Netanyahu does not want this to end because Netanyahu sees very well that the day this war will end, he's going to go to jail for corruption cases and to the international court for his crime against the humanity of genocide, which is, has issued a warrant against him and the war criminal Gallant. So Netanyahu is putting all his pressure to not make this ceasefire take place.
What about the anger that Netanyahu is facing from the families of detainees inside Israel? Will he eventually yield to the pressure from those families?
He has been under this pressure for more than 12 months now. So I don't see that pressure is, doing any push forward to the ceasefire. I think the true and more strong pressure is this unconditional support that Israel enjoys from the United States and other Western powers need to stop. I'm not very hopeful that the ceasefire, that Netanyahu is going to make any ceasefire without, American pressure.
Lastly, sir, what about the internal divisions inside Netanyahu's government? How do you view the major disagreements within the Israeli government in recent times?
Well, there is a huge disagreement of Netanyahu policies because he's leading, his country into, an absolute devastation. The image of Israel is now collapsing all over the world. It is a country that's practicing genocide, occupation, and then apartheid. And the image of Israel is collapsing, and the Western power and the Western support is diminishing. Netanyahu does not think in terms of, in favor of everyone or in favor of his own people, but he thinks of himself and how he could gain from this mass destruction of the Palestinian people. And let's be clear, his intentions from the very beginning is the extermination of the Palestinian people and forcefully displace us from our land. What's happening in Gaza has nothing to do with October 7 or his claims or his claimed goals that he wants to end Hamas. He wants to end the Palestinian people, and he has said it, indirectly and sometimes directly many times.
That was the spokesperson of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, Fatah Ahmed Fatouh. Thank you, sir, so much for your insights. And now we're going to move back to Rana for more news and developments around the world.
Thank you so much, Salma. Now we move on to Israeli Defense Minister Israeli Katz has announced that a new conscription law aims to draft tens of thousands of Haredim. He added that a draft bill addressing Haredi military service exemptions will be presented to the Knesset to prevent a coalition crisis. Katz seeks 50% Haredi enlistment, aligning with a poll showing 68% public support for mandatory service. The law aims for fairer participation and resolves tensions between Haredi parties and the government.
כמו מול לבנון, כמו מול סוריה וגם במזרח, שלא ייווצרו יותר איומים.
Former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has announced his resignation from parliament. That came after being dismissed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in November amid disputes over the Gaza war. In a televised statement, Gallant emphasized the need to reassess and choose the direction to achieve goals that reflect his battlefield philosophy.
כשר הביטחון לשעבר, אני אחראי לכל מה שאירע, מתחילת תפקידי.
Now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The Lebanese news agency has reported that an Israeli patrol, reinforced with Merkava tanks, vehicles and bulldozers, entered the outskirts of the town of Beit Leaf in southern Lebanon. According to the agency, Israeli soldiers searched several homes and forests in the town and also mentioned that the area of Rumeya, located between the towns of Beit Leaf and Yatir in southern Lebanon, came under Israeli artillery shelling. Lebanese media has reported that Israeli forces conducted artillery shelling in the Rumeya area between Beit Leaf and southern Lebanon. It was also noted that Israel launched 2 airstrikes in the same area. Earlier, an Israeli force supported by Merkava tanks and vehicles advanced into the outskirts of Beit Leaf, reaching previously unentered areas, searching homes and wooded areas. Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri had met with the head of the Monitoring Committee for the Ceasefire with Israel, General Jasper Jeffers, and U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Lee Johnson, in Beirut. The meeting addressed ongoing Israeli violations of a ceasefire agreement, including low-altitude drone flights over Beirut and its southern suburbs, and a recent Israeli strike on a house in the southern town of Beit Leaf. And now we move on to the latest developments in Syria. A Syrian delegation led by newly appointed Foreign Minister Asad Hassan al-Shibani has arrived in Riyadh for its first official visit abroad. The delegation also includes Defense Minister Morhaf Abu Qasra. This visit took place less than a month after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his French counterpart have discussed delegations, or rather developments in Syria, focusing on supporting Syrians in building a better future and reducing instability. Blinken emphasized the Syrian-led political transition, respect for human rights, and civilian protection, especially for minorities.
And bring him home. And we've also shared the principles that I just laid out.
The Syrian Interior Ministry has announced a large-scale sweep of neighborhoods in Homs in coordination with military operations. The sweep aims to apprehend war criminals and armed individuals refusing to surrender or comply with reconciliation centers. Residents in Wadi al-Dahab and Akrama were urged to stay indoors during the operation. Earlier, a curfew was imposed in El Talbisa and Damascus. Ukrainian President Zelensky has announced that Ukraine is preparing to restore diplomatic relations with Syria. This follows Ukrainian Foreign Minister visit to Syria on December the 30th. Zelensky also mentioned plans to boost exports to Lebanon in 2025, highlighting Ukraine's intent to strengthen international cooperation and expand trade in the coming years.
Контактів як результат візиту ми будемо збільшувати також торгівлю з Ліваном. Зараз цією країною у нас $400 мільйонів тільки нашого аграрного експорту.
Moving on to the United States, where the New York Police Department has announced that 10 people were injured after a gunman opened fire on a group of individuals in the Queens area. Police stated that there is no suspicion of terrorism in the incident. They also confirmed that the measures have been taken to tighten security around Trump Tower and Times Square following the incidents in New Orleans and Las Vegas. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced that the authorities are investigating a possible link between a truck attack in New Orleans, which killed 15 people, and a Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Biden stated that both law enforcement and intelligence agencies are examining the incidents to determine any connection, emphasizing the government's commitment to uncovering the truth behind these events.
Until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before
A Tesla Cybertruck has exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, killing one person and injuring at least 7 others. Videos of the incident showed the vehicle engulfed in flames. This explosion took place shortly after a deadly truck attack in New Orleans. Elon Musk confirmed the blast was caused by fireworks or a bomb in the truck's bed, not the vehicle itself, emphasizing no connection to the Cybertruck's mechanics. The FBI is investigating the incident. And in South Korea, the acting president has emphasized the need for immediate action, especially of Boeing 737-800 aircraft reveals any issues. This comes as authorities investigate a deadly air crash. He stated that the conversion of the cockpit voice recorder data to audio should be completed by January the 3rd, potentially revealing critical details of the crash.
끝까지 점검해 주시기 바랍니다. 이어지고 있습니다. 대한적십자사, 대한변협 다 해주시기 바랍니다.
Moving on to Russia, where the Foreign Ministry has blamed the United States, Kyiv and the European authorities for halting Russian gas supplies via Ukraine to Europe. The ministry also accused them of prioritizing U.S. economic interests over the well-being of citizens. Ministry spokesperson stated that Kyiv stopped the gas flow despite Gazprom honoring its contracts. The ministry warned that the move harms Europe's economy and living standards by cutting off competitive, eco-friendly energy sources. The Russian Defense Ministry says that its air defense unit shot down over 30 Ukrainian drones on Wednesday night. The Russian Federal Air Transport Agency announced temporary control at airports in the Sarnaks, Penza and Stratov, and also Kaluga. That brings us to the end of today's news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Israeli occupation forces carry out 5 massacres in Gaza, killing 52 and injuring 59 others. Israeli patrol with tanks and bulldozers enter Beit Leaf and Shel Rumeya area. And the Syrian delegation led by the new foreign minister visits Riyadh. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.